Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today, for informational purposes, for all the fighters out there who are looking to have a career in kickboxing, and for all the fans of the sport who are just interested, we're going to be talking about how many fights you have to make $1 million. I'm guessing that pretty much all athletes love their sport to death. If you're competing in the sport, you have an amazing passion for it. But you still want to be able to profit from the sport if you decide to make it your career, and you want to be able to make some money. So I want everybody out there to have a realistic understanding of what it takes to make $1 million in this sport of kickboxing. Now guys, before we go any further, I would like to thank the sponsor of this episode, BiOptimizers. And in particular, I want to give an extra special shout out to my favorite product that they carry, my favorite supplement, the magnesium. It is the #1 mineral to beat stress, fatigue, and get better sleep. But you don't just want any magnesium, you want magnesium breakthrough. I have talked with you guys about how much success I've been having with this supplement. Sleep goes up and pain, muscle tension, and inflammation go down. If you guys are interested in giving this supplement a try, increasing your health, click on the link down in the description below, magnesiumbreakthrough.com/Gabriel. Use the promo code Gabriel10 to get yourself 10% off. Now let's start talking about fight volume and what it takes to reach that $1 million. Now, I don't want to go into numbers of amateur fights because you guys could have somewhere like me, a low amount, 15 amateur fights before you go pro, or you could be somebody who goes more like 90 or 100 amateur fights before you go pro. Either way, you're not getting paid. But just keep in mind that before you even get to the first pro fight, you're going to have those amateur ones. Could be as little as 10 fights, could be as many as 100, but there's a lot of time you have to put in before you get to pro fight #1. Now let's talk in my experience with what I've seen other people get paid and what I got paid myself for my first pro fight. The first time stepping into the ring for me and getting paid got me a grand total of $500. We're not getting anywhere close to $1 million yet, so you guys just stay with me here. Fight #2 was also $500. Then we move on to fight #3, and I went to China for this fight, and I got paid $1,000 for my third pro fight. Now I had a couple fights around this amount of money where I was just getting that $500, but then when I got to pro title #1, I believe I got $1,500 for that, and pro title #2, which was another $2,000. And you might be thinking, oh, you won world titles, how are you getting paid so little? But keep in mind, there are many world titles, many organizations in the world, and it's not like everyone is super well recognized, or when you win a title, you become a star instantly. Some belts do that, some don't. When you're fighting for smaller promotions, smaller organizations, you don't get nearly the same amount of money as you do for the big promotions, so that is why I got paid so little for those first 2 pro title fights. Now moving on from there, I then got to the point where I got my big break in my career where I fought Lerdsila in K1. At this point, I did a massive jump up to $8,000 for winning that fight. And keep in mind, this is against a guy who was on like a 100-fight win streak. He had fought pretty much all the best guys in the world. Nobody really wanted to fight him. And for my trouble, $8,000. Now, would I have turned that down looking back at how much money I got paid? Absolutely not. To me at that point, $8,000 was a ridiculous amount of money for competing because in my amateur career, I was getting nothing. And then I had all those fights from getting 500, 1,000, 2,000. So that big bump up to 8,000 was massive for me. But unfortunately, K1, the promotion, just went kind of bloop. After that fight card, they were trying to resurrect the whole promotion. It did not work. So after that, I went over to Glory. Now, when you are fighting with the bigger promotions like Glory, 1FC, you can start looking at bigger paychecks. But when you enter the promotion, unless you're already somebody, you cannot expect to get up very high very fast. You have to do the slow, steady increase and maybe hope that you happen to win over the crowd and have some real bargaining power. But I did not have that at this point. I was still young in my career. I had only had one big win against Lerdsila, but I was by no means a kickboxing star. So I basically entered with Glory going about 50% of what I got paid to fight Lerdsila. It was a step down for sure in terms of pay, but I did get a couple tournaments with them, and with those tournaments came a $20,000 extra bonus, and then at another point, $10,000 extra bonus. And I slowly worked my way up until I got to my first world title, where I was getting about $10,000 per fight, approximately. I'm not allowed to put out exact numbers, but that just gives you a frame of reference, just sort of that ballpark figure. And I've heard for a lot of the fighters in the organization, when they're fighting for their first belt, maybe if you're not at a higher weight class, but overall you're probably expecting for your first title fight to get somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. Now at this point, as I already said, we're still building up our career. Yes, now you are the #1 fighter in the world, or close to it if you win one of these belts, but everything previous was just you creating a name. You're not getting loads of money. Once you win a belt, now you can expect to start picking up probably more like $20,000 to $30,000 per title defense. But keep in mind, that might sound like a nice amount of money, but how much did you have to fight before you got to that point? You had that whole amateur career unpaid. You had how many fights it takes to get up to this point where you even get signed by a big promotion. You're getting 500, 1,000, maybe 2,000 a fight, and then you finally become one of the best in the world, and you're getting about, as I said, 20 or 30,000. Now, if you really start to make your mark, people really start to take an interest in you. You're somebody like Badr Hari or Rico Verhoeven, then you might start seeing purses and paychecks coming in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. If you're the superstar, you might even see a little bit more than that. So reaching that $1 million mark as a kickboxing star, it might not take too long at this point, but everything in the past took a long time. We're talking years, maybe even a decade to get to this point. And if you're fortunate enough to get 50, 100, 150,000 a fight, okay, that $1 million mark is not too far off. If you fight 3 times a year for 3 years, you're probably getting pretty close to making $1 million in the sport of kickboxing. But realistically, not everybody's going to be a superstar, and you're probably going to expect that you'll be getting paid more like $20,000, $25,000 a fight for a fairly long time. Again, unless your name explodes and the promotions really need you. $20,000 to $25,000 per fight, if you're fighting 3 times a year, we are talking that basically you have to go for about a decade to start closing in on that $1 million mark. That is a long time to stay on top of the game and to be in a sport where you are taking a beating all the time. So overall, we're not talking about a lot of people who make $1 million, but let's talk about what you can do, or what I did, to make sure that the money I was making in kickboxing went a decently long way, and what you can do on the side. So for me, throughout the years, instead of going, okay, the fight purse is the money that I'm reliant on. This is the money I need to eat, to live, to pay rent, to buy a house, all of that. I went, no. My fight purse money is going to be saving money. It's going to be extra money. And my other work on the side is going to be the work that actually pays for my life, pays for everything I want to do, everything I need. Now, for a lot of people, if you want to be a professional kickboxer, you're going, okay, if I have a 9-to-5 job, like everybody else, I'm working 5 days a week, I'm exhausted at the end of the day, the weekends come, I'm pretty tired, how am I going to have a proper training schedule? And that's a very good question, a very good point. What I did instead was I put my energy into teaching the sport that I love. And instead of having to be at work 40 hours a week, I put in more like 10 or 15 hours of teaching in per week, which leaves me plenty of time to make availability for the training sessions, which I really need. And throughout the years, being able to have a job on the side, which pays for everything, and then save the fight money, that's a pretty good feeling. And although, no, I am not a millionaire from fighting, you are still able to save as long as you're not 100% reliant on the fight sports. You can become 100% reliant. You can leave your job, whatever it may be, when you get to the point that the fight sports are paying you a full-time job, full-time wage. But that takes a long time. And for some people, it's never even really a reality. If you get to that point where you get to a big promotion and you're not one of the people who are winning the belt, and you're looking at more like $10,000, $15,000, $18,000 per fight, and you're fighting 3 times a year, maybe you still want to keep a little bit of a side job because that amount of money you're making is simply not enough. And yes, there are sponsors out there, there are people who will help you along the way, but in my experience, Maybe I just didn't go asking enough people, but in my experience, it was not enough to even help cover any costs that are realistic towards the cost of living nowadays. So overall, guys, if I had to put an exact number on it, I would say many people are never going to reach the point where they make $1 million in fight sports, because realistically, as a pro fighter, you're going to have to win one of these massive titles, and then you're going to have to stick around in the sport for possibly something like 25 to 40 fights before you start getting close to that $1 million. Again, there are people who are the exception, who are getting paid more money, people who are a star in the sport because of their fight style, their personality, their looks, whatever draws those fans towards them and gives them more power to negotiate. Always keep in mind, if you are a fighter and you're somebody who wants to go forward with a career, if you want to have negotiating power, nowadays, a lot of it is going to come down to your social media presence. And this is something I entirely neglected pretty much up into the last 2 years, where I got on this YouTube channel and I went, you know, I'm having fun sharing. I want to teach everybody out there. And then my social media presence started to build. But I did not have that earlier. I was so focused on the training and winning the belts behind me. I went, this is my priority. I don't care about anything else. But it came back and bit me when it was contract time, contract re-signing, because of the promotions would often say, well, your social media, it's not really on point. You don't have as many people as this other guy. We paid this other guy this amount of money, so we have to give you less. It's just the reality, and it's just something I wanted to share with you overall. So guys, that is it. That's the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed learning this financial information about kickboxing. If you enjoyed the episode, guys, give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel, get subscribed. Train hard, guys, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.